All right, good evening, everyone. This is the Town of Barnstable Infrastructure and Energy Committee meeting on Monday, September 23rd, 2024. This meeting of the Barnstable Infrastructure and Energy Committee is being recorded and will be posted for future viewing on the Town of Barnstable website under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20. Anyone else desiring to make such a recording or transmission must notify the chair. And with that, I hand it over to Barry Scheingold, the chair.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. So why don't we start with going over the meeting minutes for the last meeting? And actually, I had a few suggestions on the meeting minutes. And the first one is under old business green communities designation, the second paragraph. And these changes, I didn't think the first sentence really captured what I was trying to convey. So Chris, if Michelle, you can take notes here. So to change that first sentence to, I'm actually going to separate it into two sentences. The first one is, this is a unique opportunity to, and then insert, suggest changes to the stretch code. So we're inserting suggest changes to the stretch code, and then comma, rather than just adopting or not adopting the stretch code as is, period. So let me go over that again. So it would read, this is a unique opportunity to suggest changes to the stretch code, comma, rather than just adopting or not adopting the stretch code as is, period. And then the rest of that sentence would be another sentence. So it would read, DOER had proposed incorporating various comments from the Massachusetts Builders Association and then town building inspectors instead of regional building inspectors, etc. So let me read that again. DOER had proposed incorporating various comments from, and then the Massachusetts Builders Association, town building inspectors, etc. So do you think you have that? You'll have the recording, so hopefully that'll.
Yep. Sure.
That'll help. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. And then on the following page, where it has new business and additional updates, and then there's a bullet where I shared various updates. The first bullet there, actually, that's fine, but I think the important thing from the town's perspective is to add after the sentence, after the next few months, utility contracts will be negotiated and will pursue filing with the Department of Public Utilities. That's fine, but to add the Commonwealth Wind project was not selected. Okay, do you have that? Or do you want?
Yes. Nope.
Is that clear? Okay.
Yes.
And then the last one is the third bullet here, and this is a very complicated thing, and I was just trying to suggest an edit that would capture what the lawyers were saying. So the sentence that said there are provisions where the state can overrule local decisions in which the Energy Facility Siting Board has already approved, to change that to there are provisions where the state can effectively overrule local decisions, period. Do you have that? Or is that,
Yep, we're good.
okay, all right. So with that, um,
Barry, I don't know if you know you muted yourself.
I,
Oh, there you
yeah, okay, all right. Anyways, with those changes, I'm good with the minutes. Let's see whether anyone else has any other suggestions. If not, I move that the minutes be approved with those changes.
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't, I mean, I guess I could
Okay.
still vote that the minutes are okay, but I'm just taking your word for it.
Okay, all right. All right, so it's not, that, I guess that passes. There's nobody
That's a
against it.
pass or abstain.
Okay, all right. With that, the minutes as amended will be approved, are approved. So let's move on to food waste. So John, you're taking the lead on that. Do you have any updates or talk about what your
Well,
plans are?
but there really two. I'm afraid more questions and updates. So one thing I'm wondering, and I don't know, Michelle, if you would know this, whether where we stand as far as hiring an assistant for Kelly in DPW communications.
Yes, John, he's right here. This is Chris.
Oh, Chris, you are. Oh, okay. So you're. I didn't know that you were communications specific to DPW. So
Yeah.
Yep, he just was hired on Friday. Or
Yeah,
he started
okay,
So
working on
John,
Friday.
your wish
Yeah.
has been granted.
that's true. That's terrific. Well, I was I was very happy to have your assistance with the meeting. But no, so do you, Chris? Did you get any of the? Have you heard any of the background on what we're trying to do with food waste at the transfer station?
I have not. I read I think it was last week's minutes, but it was honestly very quickly. I've been, kind of thrown
Yeah.
into a lot of things. But no, if you'd like to give a little primer, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll try to just give very short version, and then we can meet separately if that's better. But basically, we're trying to promote collection of food waste at the transfer station, and where it stands is we were working. Kelly was working on a fairly ambitious communications plan. I think at this point, that plan has not been finalized and approved. But what my thought was that in the meantime, while Kelly is out, we can get to work on some of the easier items. And the particular one that I think would be good to address first is just simply signage, to see what we can do to make the signage more conspicuous and also to convey more information about the benefits of collecting food waste. And it would be terrific to have somebody, it's a professional who has the skill in designing effective communications.
Mhm.
So, not quite sure what the next step maybe would be for us to meet, and just I can sort of give you some of my ideas, and you can tell me what you think is feasible, or what you think would work.
Yeah, and I'll reach out to Kelly if she still hasn't
Yeah.
officially started maternity leave. And I'll see what she has in terms of any projects. I'm sure she has all the documentation for it, but I will see where that's at, if I can pull anything from that. But then, yeah, we'll definitely touch base.
Okay, that sounds great. Do you have my contact information, or what's the best way for us to get in?
I'll email you.
Okay, terrific. So that's one item, and then the other item is I don't know if we have yet sent a message to Tom McKean about seeing if we can meet with him about on the commercial side?
We haven't, John, why don't you take the lead on that?
Okay,
Um, you know,
yeah, I'd be, yeah, no, I can.
why don't you just, draft an email and maybe run it by me
All
before
right,
you send it out?
all right.
Um, okay. I did read something. I wish I had saved it.
Mhm.
But some group did an analysis on what all the different states were doing with regard to food waste,
Mhm.
and I think they put Massachusetts at the top of the list.
I
Mhm.
saw that too.
Yeah,
I'll
Yeah,
look
yeah.
for it because it was pretty recent.
yeah. So
They didn't say Barnstable County, but they did say Massachusetts.
right.
Yeah.
I think Massachusetts has a good plan now. How it gets and how well it's implemented is a totally different question. So
Yeah, but I think it's very helpful that what we're trying to do is in alignment with what the state is doing.
right, yeah, exactly. So anything else on food waste?
No, no, those are the two items, and I'll go ahead and draft an email and run it by you.
Okay, great. Um, well, the next is climate change and climate science. So we usually rely on Chris to talk to that, but he's not here. But I'll open it up for anyone else who has something to talk to say about that.
I just happened to see one or two emails earlier today. There's a I think it's sponsored by Bloomberg. There's a big climate leadership meeting in New York City this week, along with the UN meeting, obviously more focused on their part on a lot of the wars around the world. But one of the interesting things was the governor of the state of Washington, which has been a forward-leaning state. And in fact, I think he ran for president on a climate change as his number one priority platform. He and some other governors are pulling together an effort to put even more emphasis and hopefully facilitate green jobs, funded by a boost from the Inflation Reduction. No, he's actually, I just got a message back from Chris. He's actually on his way to this conference that I'm talking about. So maybe we should just wait till our next meeting and let him update us.
Yeah,
But I think it's going to be a lot of key people. There's apparently some other little COP meeting somewhere, but it's totally overshadowed by the one in New York that has a lot more business leaders and like governors. So
yeah. So I did a fair amount of consulting work in California, say 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I know that there was an effort at that time, some of the Western states and Western Canadian provinces to try to get together to work in some uh, coordinated fashion to deal with climate change. I don't know if anything ever came out of it or whether this
one
is
thing that's still kind of in the balance on that is that California has on their ballot for November should I think major corporations present a record of their emissions, not only with their activities, but with their supply chains. There's some big deal about, opening your books on how many emissions you're creating. And Washington State is a semi-partner in that. I don't know if they're also voting on it, but they've been considering it. There's been a lot of back and forth over the past 12 months about this issue on Politico has a specific California climate edition that I tend to read pretty often. So there is some effort to that coordinated activity. And I'm sure that'll be part of what's talked about in New York this week.
okay, great. Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, he said he's on his way to Climate Week in New York City. Sorry to not give that feedback sooner. That's what his message.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
we'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yep.
So that brings us to new business. So I guess we skipped over green communities. I didn't really talk much, didn't really speak to that. So I'll do that right now. So I guess when we met last time, I had drafted suggested comments to be filed by the town that we went over relating to DOER's proposed changes to the stretch code. And that they generally, they got the support of the committee. I circulated them the following morning to Mark Ells, our town manager, and to Brian Florence, our town building inspector. And we met a couple days later, and it was a very positive meeting. I explained that the substance of the comments came from questions that had been raised by Brian Florence in the meeting we had with him, based on a conversation, several conversations that I had with this consultant for the Mass Home Builders and Remodelers Association, and Brian Florence suggested I speak with. My review of the proposed regulations, as well as some of the questions that were raised 3 years ago when the stretch code came up to the town council. So they were generally favorably received. Brian Florence said he wanted to have more time to really review this and think of it. There were some specific questions that came up, and the way it was left, that Brian would review it and forward any suggested changes to Mark L's office. And Brian did have some changes. He sent them to me first, which I appreciated. And we had a discussion. Generally, his comments were that he would like to see DOER do more to address the costs of home remodeling projects, and also that the threshold for the stretch code review and the HERS rating be increased, basically from 1,000 square foot projects to 1,250 square foot projects. And with those changes, it went over to Mark Ells and it got sent out under his signature. So so that's been done. From here, my plan is to follow up maybe next week with Lisa Sullivan, who's the rep from DOER for our region. Give a chance for things to percolate with DOER. So I'm interested in finding out, what is the timing for their action on the proposed rules, because I think once that is adopted, at least my view is we would perhaps ask the town council and to have a workshop, which we would help create or help organize, and seeing how that goes and see whether be taken up to vote on the stretch code after that. So I suspect from what I've heard so far, we're talking end of the year, maybe early next year. Just they have a process to go through, and whether, these comments that they've gotten, whether that's going to lead them to make other changes. I will say that they had a listening session, and there were some other suggestions, but I would say the great majority of the comments were supportive of what DOR is doing. And there were some suggestions for other changes sort of in the same direction, to have more flexibility in the regulations. So, the other thing, the conversation, there was a comment there about whether, whether a suggestion should be made that would explicitly give the building inspectors the right to allow temporary occupancy, and this is mainly for new projects. And I think the feedback that we got from the very experienced consultant to the Home Builders Association is that they already have that authority. And after discussing with Brian and Brian thinking about it, that those general comments were omitted. The specific ones with regard to the passive energy component or pathway, that was retained because there were some specific issues with the timing of that. So anyway, that's kind of my update, and interested in any comments that people have on that.
Well, sounds like you've gone to some great lengths and done a good job, Barry, moving this along, especially to get a document that both Brian and Mark were pleased with and had very little to change. So, and plus connecting to that elusive person that took a while to find in the Builders Association, that all sounds like good progress. And I tend to agree with you that this is going to be, slow and steady progress, and maybe not much until January in terms of a workshop. But I think it apparently requires that, and I think the more careful we are and methodical we are, the more likely we are to make some headway.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's, I think this is a terrific step we've taken, or really maybe I should say you've taken, Barry. But one question, I'm just thinking about what else can we be doing while we're waiting for these, hopefully for these amendments to be adopted. And one thing I'm wondering is, how comfortable or confident are we that if these changes to the stretch code are in fact made, that Brian will then be either supportive or neutral on the question of the town adopting it?
Yeah, I think Brian has been very clear with us, as he was at the last town council meeting. He's almost wearing two hats with us. One is he's giving his personal view of the merits of it.
Yeah.
And and secondly, he's speaking as someone who would be responsible for implementing whatever decision the town council makes. So to me, the more we can address the factual questions that people have had and will have, the better off I think we'll be. But to the extent there are fewer issues, and partly because of what DOER has done, I think the better chances of a stretch code being adopted. But we don't know whether it would be or not. But I think the most we can do is do the groundwork. And here's what I was thinking. Your other question is good. What can we do in the interim? What I was thinking of doing was inviting Lisa Sullivan to our meeting, maybe even the next meeting. So I think she's expressed a willingness to do that. Now, given that these proposed regulations are under consideration, she may be limited in what she can say, or may be reluctant to do it at this time. But I think we've talked about inviting her, and I think this, from my standpoint, this is a good time to ask her.
I
I think it'd
think
be
one of
great.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree that it'd be good to have her. And I think one of the most important things to clarify that I think was sort of thrown around without good references backing it was what truly is the return on investment to the building owner and potentially to the builder. There are incentives to the builder. And, you know, I really felt like some of the pushback was some of the folks talking in that December meeting nearly 2 years ago now just didn't want to go, you know, jump through another hoop. They wanted to just do business as usual. They didn't want to bring in a HERS rater, and they were very skeptical that that was going to help, and it was going to add cost, it was going to delay the project. So I think we need to be very careful and to hear from her, you know, where is the best place in their whole write-up on the Green Communities page regarding the benefit at the building cost and the benefit at operations and maintenance. Because even though I've said I'm going to get this data and I haven't done it yet, the U.S. Green Building Council has shown recovery of any additional upfront costs, which, you know, 10 or 15 years ago was on the order of maybe 5% to build a building to U.S. Green Building standards, which is higher than what we're talking about. But the recoup in the operating and maintenance was like in the first year. And the resale value for commercial properties was tremendous. The difference in resale for a green building and also the occupancy rate for you know, rented buildings that were built to green codes, which I think the regular code is now catching up to that. So
as I've gotten into this, the answer to a lot of your questions, Jane, is it depends.
yes.
Yeah. So, but
So I didn't catch that, Barry. The answer, get the what?
it depends.
It depends. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Case by case.
so it you know, some of the analysis depends on whether you use heat pumps or use gas for, you know, for new construction. Other issues are depending on the size. If you're able to use mini splits or ductless units versus the ducted units, the economics look even better. So anyways, without getting into a lot of details, but it just occurred to me, Jane, that you and Bill have a background in from a medical standpoint and a health standpoint, and that is one of the, you know, DOER is trying to advance heat pumps as part of the decarbonization process instead of using fossil fuels. So there is a health benefit.
There's an enormous health benefit.
Right. But I think, you know, I don't have the background in that. I think you and Bill do. And I know Bill's not here. I don't want to volunteer him for someone who's not here. But
well, he seemed quite interested in that. The last meeting when I was here was maybe the first time I was in a meeting with him. He seemed quite interested in that. And I'm very interested in that. And in fact, I don't know if anyone's been noticing a story that's been kicking around in the Cape Cod Times for the last 2 or 3 weeks about the $500,000 upgrade, or it's not really an upgrade, it's remediation to the Barnstable High School and one of the, I think one of the middle schools for mold remediation.
Right.
This really hit a nerve with me because one of the first things I did when I started sitting in on this committee was I co-authored a letter that then the whole committee accepted. We sent as a suggestion to the town at the town council at the beginning of COVID that indoor air quality was a key issue that should be looked at in all municipal buildings for the health of the occupants, both the office buildings and the schools, for the health of the occupants, especially during the pandemic. And obviously it's not just the pandemic, it's also mold that we're very susceptible to on Cape Cod, and that buildings became even more susceptible to when they were closed for so long during the pandemic. That was co-authored by John Boyle, who was the assistant chairman of the committee then, who was an engineer, who was hearing the same things that I was hearing in medical circles in his engineering circles. And that letter was never even acknowledged by the town council. And when we pressed David Anthony on it, he said, well, you know, I think we actually ran a draft past him. And he just pulled back and he said, if we were to send out this letter, we would be acknowledging liability for why didn't we do it earlier? And I think this issue that's in the newspaper this week and last week was already percolating because it started in 2019 and it was a mold issue back then. So that's a huge part of green building. And, it has to do with humidity control and bringing in outside air and purifying the air if necessary and proper filters and all this. I mean, it's the whole package of doing a very good HVAC system for any building. So anyway, there is a huge health implication in this.
Yeah, and I think Bill raised the meeting about what the ventilation requirements were or standards. Right. There's the stretch code and the base code, and there may even be I don't know whether it's additional or not for the whole home rebate for heat pumps, which is I think a mass save thing. Right. So here's my suggestion, and I can maybe do this with an email after the meeting, but suggest that Jane, you and Bill, look into the, how the ventilation requirements of the stretch code differ, if at all, from the base code, and what are the health impacts. And regardless of that, because the provisions of the stretch code really are designed to encourage use of heat pumps, what are the benefits, health benefits of heat pumps versus use of fossil fuel? And then maybe you could coordinate with Bill, because it's really, you're better suited to do it than I am, and I think Bill is as well. So,
well, I'd be glad to help with that. I'll try to follow through on it a little more timely than I did before. But I actually helped set up it was not a committee. It was not really even a regular part of NIH. It was more a discussion group. We called it the Health in Buildings Roundtable. I was a co-founder of that in 2011 at NIH.
Okay.
And it was actually sort of co-hosted by the NIH campus architects and buildings department, like their DPW, as well as the Institute for Environmental Health and Toxicology and that sort of stuff, which interestingly was located in North Carolina. It's one of the few institutes that's not at the Bethesda campus. But anyway, our whole motive at that time was we were actually challenging the U.S. Green Building Council because they left indoor air quality they were focused on energy efficiency, and they left indoor air quality as an elective issue relative to the point scale for earning LEED certification. And we were a interdisciplinary group of some architects, some public health, some clinicians, building design psychologists, actually. And we said, that's not right. That needs to be a high priority. That needs to be as high as energy efficiency. And you might need to sacrifice some building tightness for, proper ventilation.
I know, yeah, I know, well, I know, I've been told that because of COVID, that this iteration of the building codes, there was a lot of focus on ventilation and air exchange, for health reasons. And what I don't know is to the extent that they differ for the base code
Right.
and the stretch code,
Okay, I'll try to figure that out.
whether or not there are additional requirements for the mass save whole home rebate, which is important in the economics of this.
Yes.
Yes, I read at Guy Webb's suggestion, the Home Builders Association, well, it wasn't them, but it was another group that they helped to sponsor, did their own study of the costs of the stretch code versus the base code, but they didn't consider the whole home rebate or the federal tax credit, which together is $17,000, a big amount. And one of the things he said, well, there are some additional requirements that impose costs. And if that's the case, I don't know whether DOER considered them either. So, I'll send out an email, and maybe we can not have this on the agenda for the next meeting, so you and Bill have some time to work through it. And maybe for the meeting after this, give you.
I even called the state office, I forget, it was like environmental health relative to buildings, and got to the person who does these assessments, air quality assessments for schools. I did it because we were trying to figure it out for our church, and churches fall through the cracks. They're not really commercial, they're not schools, but they're as close to schools as anything else. Anyway, this guy walked me through a self-assessment that you could do of whatever building in question you were worried about, whether it was a school or you're doing it of a church, place of a school. But anyway, the state will do a very good job helping you with what needs to be upgraded. How do you assess what needs to be upgraded for your public school system? So that cost is paid by taxpayers, but it is so critical. It is so critical. And I've got extra air purifiers all around our house because I like to test them before I recommend them to people or to our church or whoever. And I also have air quality monitors that measure 6 indices. It's not just temperature and humidity, it's carbon dioxide, which is a sort of a placeholder for, do you have good enough ventilation? Are you bringing in enough outside air? You don't want your indoor CO2 to be above 600. About the average in public schools is 2,500. So it's no wonder the kids are falling asleep, because they're not getting enough oxygen. They can't think well. And the same thing for some office buildings. But it also measures VOCs that go up with gas stoves, and they go up with forest fires and all that. And it,
so what the codes are that I've seen are residential and commercial.
okay.
And but anyway, let me I'll follow up with an email to you and Bill. I'll copy everybody else, and maybe when we get to and because Bill hasn't agreed to do anything, he's not here, that for the next meeting, maybe I suggest you could report.
Yeah, that sounds good. Plus, we want to hear, if you get Lisa Sullivan, and we'll want to hear from Chris when he gets back from his meeting.
Right.
That's a big meeting he's going to.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all in terms of additional. Oh, I have one other update. So the town council meeting that was planned for last Thursday got rescheduled to this Thursday. And there's an item on the agenda that may be of interest to you, and that is we're going to have there's going to be a presentation from MIT's Renewable Energy Clinic, and I guess the head of that I've known for decades, and although he won't be a presenter. But what they've done is to focus on working with communities and developers of projects. And in what I've seen, it involves they're playing the role of a neutral third party or facilitator in discussions. So that'll be interesting to see, to listen to their presentation and what applicability they think it has to the town of Barnstable and, you know, the offshore wind projects. I don't know if there are any active solar projects. I will say that it's been a few decades ago, but I was involved in a project where a third-party facilitator was retained, and it was very useful, and it led to a successfully negotiated agreement. It didn't involve the MIT folks, but another guy who did this. But yeah, so it's this
That sounds good.
Thursday, if people are interested, you know, suggest that you listen in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that sounds good. And Rob, I've gotten involved on the committee, the commission's committee to review the Vision Zero plan that's coming to the Cape. And I know you've been interested in some of the bike safety things. Are you getting those anyway from the commission, or would it be useful for me to? I just got an email from Colleen Medeiros a day or two ago talking about the recordings of the initial citizen advisory group. I think we're going to have 4 meetings and give them our insights. And then there's a open to the community meeting tomorrow at noon on Zoom to give anybody's opinions on bike, pedestrian, and vehicular safety. They actually have a very neat feedback software that's you know, mapping the whole town, and you can go in, put a cursor on a particular location that you think that warrants an upgrade, either a stop sign or a crosswalk or a speed bump or something like that. You can give feedback on basically dangerous road areas or pedestrian not supported areas anywhere in the town. And those are going to help focus attention on, you know, whatever area gets the most bad marks, if you will. I think that's a really interesting and useful instrument, only if people go to the website and, you know, voice their opinion. But I can send that email out to everybody, and if you're interested, I'll send it to you, Chris, and you and Kelly, and then you can share it if that seems of interest. More for people to get involved as individuals, but just to be aware that it's ongoing.
Thank you. Okay, good, great. So I guess is there anything else on this? If not, we can go on to discuss the agenda for the next meeting.
I think we can go to the next meeting.
Okay, so yeah, so I certainly why don't we just keep green communities relevant updates? I will call Lisa Sullivan.
Yeah, if that turns out to be Lisa, that's great. And if not,
yeah,
it can be an update.
Right. So do we want to put here is a subheading, ventilation and health issues?
Yeah, we'll, you know, like you said, we won't be given a huge report yet, but maybe give some feedback on, I mean, it could be HVAC / indoor air quality, because That's the selection of HVAC is going to fit in with the whole green community piece, the energy efficiency, but the focus on the indoor air quality is the health part of it.
Yeah, so I mean, again,
However you want to say it.
yeah, the focus is what are the benefits, what are the costs, you know, what is the difference, and if there is any, between the stretch code and the base code. So
Right.
that, yeah. So maybe we can put that as a sub heading, ventilation and health. Food waste. I'm just looking at the existing agenda, whether we need to just do it.
And I think hearing from Chris should have a pretty big chunk. I'd be very interested to hear at least 20 minutes from him on what he considered highlights from the meeting that maybe have the greatest relevance for Cape Cod. A lot of it will. I mean, because here we are hanging out there in the ocean, and look at what happened just this last rainstorm.
Yeah, you know, I'll just follow up with Chris, give him a few more days, and maybe just suggest that he could do that for the next meeting. We'll just keep the.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
on his way to the meeting, so I think it runs the rest of the week.
Okay.
So if you wrote to him, he could at least know we're going to be interested in hearing highlights from him. You don't have to say more than that, really.
Okay.
I think.
All right. Good. Does anyone have anything else?
No, I think we've got a lot going, and we're very glad to have you, Chris, helping us.
Glad to be here.
And
And
Michelle,
I think something Kelly did that was wonderful, that we had a previous administrative helper that was also excellent. Kelly's been very good at suggestions. So if you have suggestions, don't hesitate to put yourself on the committee and make suggestions, because lots of what she said has been very helpful.
Duly noted.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone want to move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Okay. I'll second it then, and all in favor of adjourning?
Good meeting.
You all
Thank
do?
you.
Okay. Thank you.